when you're a curator and you see an exhibition travel to other venues, it's a great thing to have a show go on the road. And this has been tremendous to see this exhibition really recreated here under Connie's stewardship and this very creative, wonderful installation. You'll see some pictures of how the show looked at ICA, completely different. And so it's wonderful for me as a curator to re-experience the show, to re-experience works in the show. It's kind of like this is a sort of an accordion book where the works turn in on each other and they have a very special relationship. So thank you, Connie, for making the show anew. And I also want to use this opportunity to thank my mother. Like many children, I came to Maira Kalman's work through my mother giving me Maira's children's books. I should say I was 30 years old when my mother gave me Max in Love as a Christmas present, and it obviously took. So thank you, Mom. Okay, so by way of introducing Maira and the exhibition, I thought I'd begin by reading words of introduction from the catalog essay, which begins, "Here's a routine that's been in rehearsal in the wings of the museum for nearly 2 years now. It begins with you asking me what I've been working on. I say, a Maira Kalman show. You say, who's Maira Kalman? I say, you know, Maira Kalman, the illustrator. Occasionally the routine ends here, wreathed in smiles, while you say, oh, Maira Kalman, I love her work. More typically, it continues with my answering your inquiring look. Maira Kalman is the author of 12 children's books and creator of Max Stravinsky, the dog poet of Ooh La La, Max in Love. Among her adult classics is an illustrated edition of William Strunk Jr. and E.B. White's timeless grammar, The Elements of Style. Her book, The Principles of Uncertainty, is a series of picture essays, a memoir of thoughts and reflections a la Montaigne, but illustrated. Incidentally, Montaigne was also sure that nothing in life is certain. Kalman's book is based on a year-long column that she created for the New York Times online. In December 2009, she completed a second column called And the Pursuit of Happiness, about democracy and history in America. The series opens with her coverage of President Obama's inauguration ceremony in Washington, D.C., and the handwritten word, hallelujah. As an illustrator and writer, Kalman has done a lot of editorial work for the New York Times over the years, as well as for the New Yorker. I love this. The New Yorker sent Maira to cover the Venice Biennale a couple years ago, and somewhere in her impressions, she confesses, I hate art. Born in Israel in 1949, she's lived in the city of New York since the age of 4. This is Tel Aviv. Her most recent work, or her most famous work, is a cartoon map of New Yorkistan that shows the boroughs divided into tribes like Pashmina on the Upper East Side, Taxistan in the Bronx, Irate and Irant in Brooklyn. Sorry. There they are. There's Irate and Irant. It ran on the cover of The New Yorker in December 2001 in the midst of the aftermath of 9/11. It was many people, including my own, many people's first burst of laughter. It was pored over, quoted, analyzed, translated. Did you know that Verstunks is Yiddish for stink? In short, the map became a public distraction. As one commentator said of the panacea effect of New York's Afghanization, if the world gives you Kandahar and Chechnya, send them back Candy Bar and Kvechnya. This is a sketch for the map, for the illustration. The New Yorkistan map is actually a collaborative work by Maira Kalman with Rick Meyerowitz, who is here tonight. He too is a writer and an illustrator, and this fall Rick's History of the National Lampoon will appear in print, so look for it. So though this image is universally known, the New Yorkistan map doesn't register much name recognition. Also obscure is the original 9/11 context, since the map has been widely disseminated as everything from a puzzle to a shower curtain. So this lack of correspondence between the illustrator Maira Kalman's reputation and her work only makes this exhibition project more gratifying, because now it's my opportunity to introduce to you one of today's most idiosyncratic and revered creative artists. So that's how the catalog begins. Now on with the show. The t-shirt, this is the t-shirt we made for the show. Maira Kalman, Various Illuminations of a Crazy World, is the first major museum survey of the work of Maira Kalman, whose narrative art illuminates so many aspects of contemporary life. So here we see the installation at ICA, or as I said, it looks significantly different than here in this big open volume of space. To say a few words about the organization of the show, basically, I did the walls and Maira took the floor. When I first approached her, now about 3 years ago, about doing an exhibition, she thought that sounded okay, especially if she could create an installation to go with it, which I thought sounded okay, even though I had no idea what that might entail. So the installation, what it does entail, is composed of objects that Maira has collected over the years and which inspire her work. And since all of these things, from balls of string to pieces of furniture, this is a pie safe, this is all stuff that Maira lives with, I can testify that her studio and her apartment are looking pretty empty these days. This is Maira's studio, and what we have traveling here as part of the exhibition is a kind of theater of the studio or creative space that is a corollary to Maira's art. So you have these wonderful encounters, these correspondences that are so direct they almost feel uncanny in the exhibition, like when you see the collection, the shoebox collection of the mosses of Long Island, which Maira bought wholesale at a jumble shop, and then you see the painting of the same. So that happens again and again throughout the show, where there's sort of the connection between the installation and the objects in the room and the pictures on the wall really reinforce this idea that you've entered a world that Maira's composed and constructed. Okay, so now for my part, after spending several months in Maira's studio, just looking at her work, I selected 100 original works on paper to represent 30 years of illustration for publication. And let me tell you, it was not easy. It was really hard to narrow it down, even to 100, until I landed on this thematic approach, which is how the work was selected and also how the show is installed, not chronologically or by project, but in terms of a flow of pictorial themes and compositions which Kalman has returned to again and again throughout her work. So this is how the themes go. So it starts with self-portraiture, and it moves to family, dogs, and writing, and mapping, and cities, it's Grand Central Station, objects, furniture, landscape, dreams, disaster, food, fashion, portraiture, art, books. The last picture is of a dog, which I came to see as a surrogate self-portrait, an interpretation that Maira herself may not share. And since I have yet to see a dog drinking coffee, which is Maira Kalman's favorite beverage, let alone read a book, you can be the judge. And like a book, the exhibition unfolds along thematic lines with this narrative force. So that was my decision to hang the works with frames touching cheek to jowl, so to turn us as viewers into readers of pictures and to keep the momentum going, flowing, moving from picture to picture. This thematic approach also makes it possible to go from sketching to painting, and move fluidly throughout the various modes of Kalman's depiction. Time too collapses. This is Maira's earliest published illustration, a cartoon collage from the Village Voice of presidential coiffure. So note the man in the middle. So that work from 1977 hangs next to a recent, quite painterly portrait of Lincoln. So as the pictures show, this one moves beyond works on paper to encompass other less well-known aspects of Kalman's work, such as photography. Maira is a constant picture taker. And so here we see, I guess this is truly outdoor furniture. Maira's photograph is just above the couch that's in the painting. And to say that all of Maira's work is based on other pictures. All of her pictures come from other pictures. She might have taken the pictures herself. They might come from magazines or newspapers, other works of art. So it's very postmodern appropriation and reproduction. It's the essence of the work. So embroidery. And as these embroideries are folded into this picture flow, they appear as a form of drawing with needle and thread. Instead of pencil on paper, it's needle and thread on linen. And also Maira's work in design. She did the fabric for this fabulous Isaac Mizrahi jacket, and you can actually acquire Maira by the yard. This is upholstery fabric available from Maharam. It's the tapestry of my life. And really, most significantly, her work with M & Company. This is one of their famous watches. This M & Company is a design firm that was founded by Maira Kalman's late husband, Tibor Kalman. And to say that this watch was based on a sketch that Tibor saw in one of Maira's notebooks of a clock with the numbers sort of a jumble. So the 1014 watch is a design classic in the Museum of Modern Art now. So here's Tibor. And on the upper left is one of Tibor's collection of onion rings, now on view. And to say that the vitrine that the M&Co objects are from in the exhibition, these blue vitrines were made by Maira Kalman's son Alex when he was about 9 at summer camp. So there's extraordinary things. So also books, to say that this show focuses on Maira as a visual artist, but of course she's a writer and an author too, and some of her books are in the show. And if you know her published work, you think so much about Maira's handwriting as being part of the page. So we wanted to bring Maira's hand into the exhibition, and so we took some of her favorite quotes, she wrote them out, and we exploded them into super text, so it kind of appears as if she's written them on the walls to bring her handwriting into the picture. And theater, who knew? The Elements of Style was made into a song cycle, an opera composed by Nico Muhly. And here's Nico Muhly conducting, and Maira typing. She was part of the percussive group. And this is in the New York Public Library's reading room where the work was premiered. Wonderful. So by bringing all these various aspects of Kalman's work together, this exhibition aims, most simply, to identify and to put a name to an artist whose work appears ubiquitous but is largely unknown. And for those of us who arrive already knowing something of Kalman's art, this is a chance to see it in terms of a bigger picture, in light of which, on a more provocative note, I would say this exhibition is also an opportunity to take Maira Kalman's work seriously. Seriously. As an illustrator of children's books, depictor of dogs, lover of snacks, champion of life's pleasures and distractions, it's easy to take Maira Kalman's work lightly, and indeed, her work is light in touch. It's light in humor, and often seems light in subject matter, but in no way is it lightweight. So I'd like to wrap up this brief introduction by posing some terms by which to consider Kalman's work and this exhibition, without being too heavy-handed, of course. What makes this work significant, profound even? So first term, narrative. Narrative looms large in the big picture of contemporary art. From Kara Walker, this is an installation by Kara Walker, to David Shrigley, to Art Spiegelman, to Maira Kalman, it seems that we as viewers are looking to see stories told and unfold along new lines, to illuminate the complexities and contradictions of contemporary culture and make them somehow legible. Next term, illustration. So part of the narrative tradition, illustration has long been deemed a minor art, subordinate to those high art forms such as painting and sculpture, which today, one might argue, are themselves made increasingly irrelevant by the rise of digital culture. And as an illustrator, Kalman's art moves freely from magazines to museums to digital media. And by way of a precedent to think of another illustrator whose work transcended cultural boundaries, I just want to draw attention to Saul Steinberg, whose work was celebrated in 1978 with a major survey of his illustration. Saul Steinberg, like Maira Kalman, is best known for a New Yorker cover, his map of the world as seen from this perspective of 9th Avenue, which appeared in 1976. And one of the very early works in this exhibition by Maira, who's clearly looking closely at Saul Steinberg's work and that he's a touchstone figure for her, so a formative figure for her work. So, illustration. Next, identity. So as Connie said at the outset of organizing this exhibition at the ICA, we did not think of Maira Kalman as a Jewish artist. And then, this is the tour itinerary on my colleague Robert Cheney's back. Then we announced that the exhibition would travel, and the tour was immediately booked by 3 Jewish museums. So what's Jewish about Maira Kalman's art? At ICA, we actually convened a panel to address this question, and not surprisingly, the panel led to a complex of observations, but nothing definitive. Is it Kalman's imagery of food and family? Themes that are as stereotypically Italian, say, as Jewish. Alternatively, one might point to a Jewish artistic context, to the work of Marc Chagall and Florine Stedheimer and Charlotte Solomon, all modern artists Kalman admires and relates to. Or one might also point to the patina of objects and images that seem steeped in the 1930s and 40s, when Kalman's parents, like so many European Jews, fled their home in diaspora or disappeared. This is a portrait of Walter Benjamin. Absence. Absence is a recurring presence in Kalman's work, which has this great capacity to move lightly across even the most fraught histories, images, and emotional terrain. At the same time, take note, her work routinely goes to tough and tragic places while constantly observing those pleasures to be sought, to be had, to be savored in life. Charm. Essentially a term of dismissal, charm denotes something not worth taking seriously. Andy Warhol's graphic art is charming. His mechanically reproduced silkscreen paintings are not. Compared to the macho Picasso, the work of Henri Matisse has been deemed charming. And so this is Matisse's Red Studio. And Matisse, in reading interviews with Maira from when Maira was first interviewed, Matisse is always the artist that she cites as being sort of at the top of her totem pole or pantheon of formative artists. So here's Matisse's Red Studio, and one of my favorite works in the show is this cartoon that Maira made of when the Museum of Modern Art took up temporary digs in Queens while the new building was being built in Manhattan. So this is MoMA on the move. And so we see here Matisse's Red Studio being transported. That big red canvas is the Red Studio. And then all the little objects in the studio are being carted away like toys. And here's another work by Maira showing Matisse in the studio painting a model. So Matisse's work in his day was criticized for being decorative, charming. The polemics of charm quickly rev up to questions of gender and other polarizing issues, but for now, let's slow down and take charm as we find it, a powerful quotient in Maira Kalman's art. Okay, the gift. So I'm going to finish as I began, reading from the catalog essay, which ends on this note. In his captivating and widely read book, The Gift, Lewis Hyde reckons that art is a gift that cannot be bought or sold, only received. And as any reader of anthropology knows, gift-giving and gift-getting are no passive acts, but more or less a test of one's own humanity. Hyde writes, and I'm quoting, "That art which matters to us, which moves the heart or revives the soul or delights the senses or offers courage for living, however we choose to describe the experience, that work is received to us as a gift is received." How can it be said any better? Maira Kalman's gift is to illuminate that which matters, affirming our own capacity for joy, sadness, humor, and even charm, along with our hunger for those very same things, and some snacks. Now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's main fare, a conversation with Maira Kalman.
Thank you, Ingrid. That was great. I don't know who you were talking about. Is this on?
I think it's on. Is it on?
Yeah. Turn it off.
Well, welcome. Welcome,
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
When I went in the exhibition, I saw on the left side, just at the beginning, a suitcase. And suitcase reminded me of what I think is one of the main themes in your work, is the idea of movement and travel and being betwixt and between. So I want to ask you a question I actually ask a lot of people because I'm fascinated by this issue. What's on your packing list when you travel?
Oh, I always talk that I want to walk around the world. And so right away we have a problem. There are mountains in the way and oceans and wars and stuff like that, and I'm not getting any younger, so that's not going to happen. But I do have an image that everything that I have would contract into this teeny little thing that I would carry with me, and it would all be very neat. But so that the first thing on my list that I think of is my migraine medicine. That's going to be very important. But after that, after I have a suitcase full of that, I would have a sketchbook and a camera, and as I write in the Principles of Uncertainty, maybe a skirt for a little dance if we run into something, and maybe a magnifying glass if I run into a murder, and I assume a kind of Lord Peter Wimsey and his wife Harriet. I think that's what I'm imagining is going to happen to me.
And how would you pack differently if you were going on, a work trip versus a pleasure trip, or is there no difference for you?
No, there's no difference between work and pleasure. There is no pleasure. And so, no, or there is no work. Of course. I mean, that's all the same. It's one and the same, which is the nature of this very lucky life that I lead.
Talking about voyages, I wanted to reference the New Yorker stand cover. And Rick Meyerowitz is here. I think you're a collaborator on this. Is that correct? Are you here somewhere?
Rick? He's run away.
Did he run away? He was here before.
Somewhere,
He's
yes.
somewhere in the back. Just wanted to recognize him. And so I'm curious what maps mean to you. Some of your most kind of evocative or influential pieces have been map-related.
That's right. You promised me you wouldn't ask about maps. And then at last I said, I hate maps. Right. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No.
I've never done that before to anybody.
Really? I was hoping you would notice I was asking the same question, but in a different way. No, I'm not asking if you like maps. I'm asking only what do maps mean? Because clearly you've struck a vein in terms of the idea of creating maps.
No comment.
No comment.
No, I wish that we had my mother's map up, because that I would talk about for quite a while. I've had a few map assignments, and this map that I did with Rick, it wasn't a map. It was it was something else. Because if I had to be factual, and actually I had to do a map for Wave Hill for a garden, and I went into a complete panic to show actual roads where people had to walk. I thought it was a horrible assignment, and I was kind of sorry I took it on. But my mother's map Can we go back to it? Do you think, is that obnoxious? Is that hard to find? Ingrid, what do you think? The map that was on the wall of the United States, I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, well, maybe not a lot of you, but some of you have seen it in the book, in the Principles of Uncertainty, because it was the tipped-in thing that you could, it was your bonus thing from the book, and you could put it in your book, and then it would be something that fell out of your book, which is things that I collect, things that fall out of books from bookstores. My mother, when I asked people to make maps of the United States, made this map, and she didn't know who Saul Steinberg was. She wasn't deciding to make some art piece. She was being as literal and as honest as she could about this map. So you can't. I don't know if you can see that, but Tel Aviv and Lenin are on the bottom right. Jerusalem, Texas and California are on the top. A few random places that she's heard of. Hawaii. You see where Hawaii is? It's under North Carolina, which is under South Carolina, on the upper right. And then in the middle, it says, sorry, the rest unknown, thank you. And so there are a lot of things to be learned from looking at this map. One, this is the person that I grew up with. And when I talk about not having to know anything, I'm really talking about the relationship that I had with her, which was based completely on love and faith, and had nothing to do with performance or achieving anything or learning anything. It was a complete essence of the person you are is what it's about. So to grow up with somebody like that, and also somebody who didn't, who was crazy, was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And so I'm continually grateful to have been with a woman who was so out of every loop. And so that's my relation. So that's so that to me is a map.
Yeah, I like it.
And that's it's not caring about what the information is that you're supposed to know, and that confinement never happened. So I was always daydreaming, and was never told not to.
I was thinking for a moment about a quote that you had used in a previous talk where you said facts were banished from our house by edict.
Right, and you know what? The only way, as I said before, there was a lot of tension in the family, and most of the four of us really didn't speak to each other. There was kind of the perfunctory something like move over. I'm trying to get through the room, but the way that we would talk about things is that my mother would come home and say, "Who did I see today?" And we'd play 20 questions, and all information was passed with 20 questions. So you had to really be on your toes, and it took longer to get the information out, but that was the household.
You've described your mother as being funny, and your father as being biologically devoid of humor, something like that.
I was thinking something about my father, but I couldn't remember. He was a very interesting man, but humor was not one of his traits. He was a diamond dealer. That was one of his traits. So.
Your parents both they came from Israel, from Tel Aviv, and you came to the States, to New York, when you were 4.
Right.
And going back to maps and journeys for a moment, there was the sense you've described growing up where you didn't know whether you were kind of here or there. Were you going to go back? Were you going to stay? And
right.
kind of that feeling of mild dislocation was an important part of the way you looked at the world, and may have contributed to some of your sensibilities as an artist. Is that you still stand by that?
Right. It always helps to be alienated if you're going to do something. And actually, I had a good, but I liked the alienation, and it was a pleasant sort of disassociation from where I was. So I guess the way that I say that I'm really a journalist or a reporter, Lois Lane, or an artist at large, is that I'm constantly stepping back and looking. And I spent a lot of years being very quiet, actually, and not speaking too much, and just looking. Because I don't know what I was processing. Maybe I didn't even know what I was doing. But I was just observing and sorting out what I liked and what I didn't like. And and that, I thought, served me well.
Just thinking about the many genres in which you work, illustration, children's writing, percussion, apparently, blogging, and many others. Those you're all kind of betwixt and between all those things, and that seems to be a comfortable place of artistic production for you to be at these moments, these places between genres.
Well, following in the tradition of not learning any of these things was a good way to approach doing them. And so I studied music in high school, the High School of Music and Art, music along with other things, and then went to NYU and dropped out. Went back. It was the time of turmoil, and met Tibor, who was also trying to blow up various buildings at NYU, and it was at the time of SDS. So neither of us, and he was a history journalism major. And when we got together, neither of us were studying what we ended up doing, but we thought, well, why not? How hard can that be? So I always say that, my sister was an artist, and I said, well, how hard can that be if she does it? But I don't mean that because she's really a very talented person, but maybe a little bit I meant it. So, we somehow the not knowing allowed us to do whatever we pleased, and there was no discipline that we wouldn't try, within a certain range. We weren't trying to do surgery, or something like that.
It does seem to me that artists, one thing that makes a good artist is someone who's willing to try new things and not to be afraid, not to say, oh, I'm not going to do sculpture because I've never done sculpture, not to be afraid. And it seems like there is a kind of a fearlessness in your work that you're willing just to try something new. It seems to come out. Yeah.
Well, and the opportunities present themselves. You say, well, if I can solve this problem, well, what about that problem? And then people call you up and say, why don't you think about this? So, you don't know what's going to happen the next day.
You've had extraordinary success kind of migrating your work online in terms of the blog at the New York Times, and you're about to publish your second book that's based on work you've done online. Was that strange to become a blogger and to move stuff online, or were you just doing what you were doing and that happened to be in a cloud somewhere?
What? Wait. Well, first of all, you know what? I get stuck. I hear the word blog, and then my head starts to vibrate. I can't stand that word. So I didn't hear anything else you said, but just blog. And I thought, oh, God, don't talk about that.
I said, would you like some ice cream? Is what I.
Yeah. I say, where's my ice cream?
I won't use the B word. Your work appears online.
Thank you.
And that's kind of the brave new frontier in certain ways. So I'm just wondering whether you approached the creation of the work differently, knowing that its home would be primarily or initially digital, or whether you just did what you did and people did what they did with it, not in the B word.
Well, where's my ice cream? No, the good thing about that is that I can combine something primitive and intuitive with something digital. So I didn't realize that you had unlimited space online. So I'd say, so how much space do I have? And they said, you can do whatever you want. And so that, all of a sudden, I never shut up. And that, that poses a problem with the principles of uncertainty being a 2-pound book, and then the pursuit of happiness being a 500-page book, which is going to be a 20-pound book. I don't know what it's going to weigh. But so that aspect of it is interesting for me. But I have and it's also, the art is backlit. And when you look at, art online, it looks fantastic. It's better. So, that's good. But I don't have any interest in any digital media at all. And I was said today in the piece in the paper that I'd rather write with a stick in the mud. And if you want to put that online, you can. But it's not. I mean, I would rather have a pencil and a piece of paper. I think the brain works in a different way that way. And I think that making mistakes is what it's all about on one level. So you probably make mistakes in a computer, but I don't think they're the same. They're not as delightful.
They're not as interesting.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Are you all Facebooky and Twittery?
No, it's funny. I joined Facebook one evening while I was eating ice cream thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. And the next day I said, oh my God, what have I done? And so I defaced myself. Yeah, no, I thought it was a horrible, horrible thing. And I thought, why would anybody do this? I mean, don't you have enough to do, without a million people contacting you? Anyway, but so, people are happy, so there you go. No judgments, no judgments.
One lesson is not to eat ice cream and then get it online, because also,
Yeah,
because you can shop online too, by the way.
I can't penetrate eBay either, so.
That's probably good. Switching gears for a moment, one thing that a lot of people like about your work is not just the fact that you go between genres, but that you mix them together. Just a perfect example is the illustrations with words, with text. So a lot of people are interested, I believe, in kind of the chicken or the egg. What comes first, the image or the text or the idea? And you start with a photograph and then you scribble something down. Does it always happen one way or the other, or is each artistic event different?
It always goes back and forth, and it's always a big mess, which is actually a wonderful thing. And what I always say is that I try to make sense out of nonsense, and then vice versa. So everybody sees a million things during the day that are wonderful, and everybody hears people and reads stuff and has thoughts. So I can create this narrative out of image and writing that goes back and forth until something
happens.
It happens, right? It happens after some amount of time. And usually writing is many drafts are very bad until you find something that you can kind of live with.
But how does it work, though, with a sketch? Are it the same number of iterations, or you feel like the sketch happens, you kind of get it, and then you potchkey around a little bit, but it's mostly set?
I've thrown things away. I've thrown sketches away. But working, sketching and painting happens, and then somehow it's done, and I can go on to the next.
Is potchkey a word like blog? Should I not have said potchkey?
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked at that. That's right.
I know that that you have a lot of literary influences as well as artistic influences, and we flipped a coin earlier, and we decided we would go with some of the questions about literature as opposed to art. So just going to ask you about just a couple of the writers, a few of the writers that appear in your work, and just any association you have with them or anything that jumps out at you. So Proust, Marcel Proust, Fancy Frenchman.
Can't read him. Yeah. Right, okay.
Next, Robert Walser, not a well-known writer, but
no.
Was he the dead guy?
He's the dead man in the snow. I have a particular love of the dead man in the snow. I thought I was going to be a writer, so writing is primary, even though I don't know if I could write without the painting. I guess I need them both, but. Literature and books are really the things that I love the most. And if I had to get rid of everything, I would stay with the books. I think. I'm not sure, but I think so.
Hopefully you won't have to make that choice.
Yeah. So, and Robert Walser was somebody who ended up in a mental institution. I always think that's a good trajectory. You work some, and then you have a nervous breakdown, and then you just sort of stare at things for the last 20 years of your life. And I think I'm looking forward to that part.
They serve ice cream.
Yeah, they serve.
Let's see. Do I dare mention Walter Benjamin? He's in your.
Yeah, he's the one that wrote. He was actually the one that wrote the quote that told the story from the Proust quote that's in the show about I left my cane in your house. Oh, sorry, I found my cane. So, and he also loved Walser. So there's this continuing relationship between these. Not very esoteric writers, but.
What about Abraham Lincoln?
He was a great writer. He was a beautiful, beautiful man and a beautiful writer. So in the pursuit of happiness, I pursued Lincoln and fell madly in love with him, and wrote in my date book, Mrs. Maira Lincoln, and that was the beginning. I said that was the beginning of a beautiful relationship. And it's wonderful that I could have a relationship with, a dead president from the 1800s. It's kind of it's a wonderful world when you can do that. So, so I've been working on Lincoln stuff.
And you said he was also a very funny writer, which I was surprised.
Well, I don't know if he was a funny man. When you read anecdotes, he was funny, but he was, but the Gettysburg Address is one of the great, people could say it's the greatest speech ever written, and it's 372 words or something like that.
There's a Far Side cartoon, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but you see Lincoln behind his shoulder, and he has his speech, and you see the end of a joke. It's just like, how long should a man's legs be all the way to reach the ground? Wait for laughter. And 7 years ago.
You start with a joke.
You start with a joke.
Helps,
so I'm
right?
trying to imagine what joke he started with on Gettysburg. Yeah. Sorry, poor taste.
And his wife was in a mental institution, but that's,
It all connects. I know that you are going to be illustrating the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas by Gertrude Stein. Correct. Which we are all looking forward to. We have a Gertrude Stein show coming next year. The book will be out somewhat after that show. So Gertrude Stein, a writer that...
And, crazy, incomprehensible. I'm completely in love with Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas. And so there's Lincoln and Gertrude and Alice. It's a wonderful day. But actually, in Smarty Pants, which is a children's book, there was a Gertrude Stein section. So there's a lot of interesting stuff, of course, what she was doing at the turn of the century when modernism and painting and music and everything erupted. So she was there. And so we have a little clip of something apropos Gertrude Stein. It's a few seconds long, right? A W.C. Fields. But I think we have to turn the lights off or something. What do you think?
Delightful fragments by Gertrude Smarten. Would you like to hear it? Would you like to hear it?
Oh, yes, I would, dear. Yes, surely I would. Sure.
We have what we have not.
Have we anything, sir?
What we have not, we have. Up is down, down is... Are you listening?
Oh, yes, dear. I beg your pardon, yes. Are you going to eat the rest of that sausage?
Yes, I am.
Oh, that's all right.
Down is out. Everyone knew me, and I was happy. Are you listening?
Yes, dear.
And we were all happy. Is everybody happy? And I bought a big red apple. Yes, unhappiness is joy. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful?
It doesn't really matter why we showed that, but I'm just curious as to the Gertrude Stein connection. Is that...
Yes,
Yes.
Gertrude Smarten. And you can hear Gertrude Stein, if you go online, it's easy to find interviews and pieces that she read. Her piece on Matisse is fantastic. And then an interview when she comes to New York, she wrote Four Saints in 3 acts, the Virgil Thompson opera, which Florine Stedheimer did the sets for in 1934. And then when Mark Morris did it some years ago, I did the sets for it. And but Florine they'd just invented cellophane, so she was using cellophane in the set, and it was quite glorious. But so it's just very funny and wonderful.
I'm a huge fan of W.C. Fields and the Marx Brothers and all that. Right. Do you have? Would you regularly curl up on a Saturday night with, let's say, bowl of Neapolitan ice cream and watch the Marx Brothers or Abbott and Costello?
Yeah, well, Abbott and Costello not so much, but the Marx Brothers and of course the madcap comedies of the 30s and 40s and Fred Astaire.
How about
the usual fare? And Danny Kaye, of course, Danny Kaye, who I adore.
Pestle with a pestle.
The Vessel with the Pestle has The Brew That Is True from the Court Jester and The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. So all of that humor and madness and fashion and cinema is wonderful.
Let's open up to questions and we'll continue our conversation. Please use the microphones, even if you talk loudly and boldly.
There are questions?
Of course, it's always at the very top.
So I have to say thank you to Ingrid and to Claudia and to Connie and to Julie for making this Joker take. I can't say that I'm going to take myself seriously because that would be way too much. But maybe a little bit more seriously, or maybe less. I don't know. Anyway, but it's been a wonderful experience to see this work come together. So.
We'll start with the top and then we'll come down here.
Thank you for coming, first of all. My question is about your work with the New Yorker. You've had a long history with them, and I was wondering if you can talk about your experience working with the New Yorker and whether it's been a positive experience and what the future holds with the New Yorker. And has it changed your life, if at all?
The future, the New Yorker is folding, I think, in a month or two. I don't want to. My future with it, what's interesting about being an illustrator is that you can have a relationship with a magazine and think that they love you madly, and then you send in an idea or 2 or 10, and they don't even bother answering. They just say, "Who do you think you are to send us an idea?" So, which is actually good. It's good to be humbled in that way, that you don't take it for granted that every old thing you come up with is something that people like and use. So, the New Yorker. Don't bother calling them. They have to call you. I have a whole stack of rejection slips from the years of going until finally. And Françoise Mouly is the cover director. So that's one of the few places where you can actually have an idea and send it in to them once you're on the list of people that they'd like to talk to, and then you work on it, and then. A few weeks ago, they asked me to do something, and it was urgent and mad, and you must do it, and I did it, and then David Remnick looked at it and said, "Nah, I don't like that," So, and then on you go. You can't dwell on that, and that's also good to learn. You just go on to the next thing, which is what I get tired of what I'm doing, and I really want to go on to the next thing, like the next question. Oh yeah, everything kind of builds, but the New Yorker definitely increases visibility tremendously and reputation. If you're in the New Yorker, then you can walk proud.
Question.
Thank you. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't address the question someone raised, which was your reaction to your exhibition in a number of Jewish museums and that kind of overlap.
Right. The Jewosity show.
Jewosity. Where are you on the Jew meter? Is that?
Right. At first I was appalled, and now I'm thrilled. I'm Jewish. So right away, it's okay. And that would be weird if, no, actually not. I suppose you don't have to be Jewish to be in a Jewish museum. But because it didn't originate in a as a Jewish venue, and it was just a place, a place of art. I like it. It gives me a kind of a cozy feeling. I don't know what I'm going to do with that cozy feeling, but so, and I don't, and I'm not, I'm not anti-Semitic, so I'm happy to be in a place that acknowledges the fact that part of my identity and part of my being is from Israel, and the history of my family and coming from Russia and from Poland and what they went through and who made it and who didn't make it. So all of that informs on some unknown, unspecific level informs my work. So I think it's a good thing, actually. I'm happy about it.
I think that a lot of times people, not to move that box to another box to try to put you in, but people I think often think of you as having a New York sensibility, kind of a quintessential New York sensibility in some ways, and the overlap between New York and a Jewish sensibility seems to be substantial, like 88% or something, and so.
Well, there's a humor factor, and Tel Aviv for me specifically is, we talk about it as it's New York on the Mediterranean, and there's a lot of energy and a lot of aggressiveness, and people are very funny, and the same in New York, less aggressive perhaps in New York, but so it's hard to top the Israeli meter of aggression, but at the same time, there are reasons for it. So mitigating circumstances, but I was talking to Howard Wallner and said, I'm having a hard time, I have a very hard time going to Tel Aviv and dealing with the feelings that people have about Israel and about the nature of politics and war and the feelings that people have about Israel, and how I can reconcile those feelings of being an Israeli and being Jewish and being proud of it and being mortified at all of the bad stuff that's going on, and how do you do that? And I said, I can't reconcile those things. And he said very brilliantly, well, you don't have to. And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, I can be fragmented and fractured and confused and sometimes very proud and sometimes very ashamed. And that's the nature of the beast. It isn't only, and the complexity of that situation is what I understand it to be, that if anybody lands only on one side of this answer or the situation, I think you'd have to be an idiot to do that, because it's so vastly complex. So I'm all over the place. And I don't know what that means.
That's also the role, I think that's the role of an artist, is not to come down and make political statements, but to reflect the kaleidoscope of ideas and possibilities there are in the world.
Right. I mean, there are people, there are artists that are political and do have very strong, and that drives a certain, a vision. I'm just not one of those people, so.
There was another hand.
Thank you, Myra. I have a question about dogs in your art, which are so...
It's a very political question.
Very. And they're so just charming and meaningful. And I'm wondering, it seems that the dogs that I'm familiar with in your art probably come from your own life. But I know firsthand that dogs in New York are part of a very vital culture. And they are here too in San Francisco, but because of the quantity in New York, they're just everywhere. And they don't live in backyards, they live on our sofas and our beds, and they're an integral part of our family. And I'm curious, when you include dogs in your art, are you inspired by your own family of dogs, or is it what you see and observe in Central Park or on the streets? The personalities and the relationships, where does that inspiration come from?
Well, I grew up in a dog-hating family. It was all animals were dangerous, and if you turn your back, a dog was going to lunge at your neck and kill you in 2 seconds. That was a given. And cats less, but you couldn't trust them either. And that was, nobody had any pets. Nobody in our family, and it was just not. And also, as a weird aside, when the villages that my mother came from, they would be, there were dogs that were attacking the Jews in the villages, so they were terrified of dogs. And they brought that terror with them to Israel, and then passed it on to me. So I was terrified, and I never had a dog until I was an adult, and circumstances brought me to have a dog who I fell madly in love with. And then I said that, once you get a dog, you sort of forget that you have children. They become way secondary, and you think, or tertiary. Then then your eyes open to something else, and you see all these creatures all over the place, and you see how much phenomenal love unconditional love that people get from pets, and then just how crazy dogs look and are, and how crazy people. And then the people are boring. You just look at the dogs. So I've only had one dog, and I will only will have one dog.
I was going to ask you one question about Milton. Milton, can you? What is this store that you have set up in the lobby tonight?
Well, my daughter's name is Lulu Bedoni Kalman, but Bedoni being a typeface, which is our favorite typeface, and designed by an 18th century man named Bedoni. It's a beautiful, beautiful typeface. But she also had many nicknames, and one of them was Milton. And some years ago, the New York Times asked a group of people to envision what they would do in Times Square when it was being redeveloped. And I said I would have a store named Milton in honor of Lulu, which would change every day. And one day I'd be selling tissues, and one day I'd be selling socks, and one day I wouldn't sell. There'd be one sandwich there, and I don't know what. And the nature of it being that things change, and you don't want to get bored, so you just do what you want to do. And I also love to make money, of course. No, of course nobody responds to that. Shot what? I love the world of selling, an entrepreneurial world, and I love the idea of having a general store. So Milton became something that, and I always want to get rid of my stuff, and I think, well, I don't want to just get rid of it, I want to sell it. So I brought my stuff here to sell. But it's going to charity, it's not going to me, yeah. It's good, we did well. We made $500, it's going to the Doctors Without Borders and the San Francisco Food Bank. So there was a good deed was done.
Will you remind
and I got rid of stuff. Sorry.
Will you remind me the name of those candies?
Mint humbugs. I sold inedible mint humbugs.
And they're actually inedible. It says inedible.
Inedible. It says on the packet 3 inedible. Well, I made the packet, but Rick tried one. Rick was the one. That's why he's not speaking, because he died after he ate one. But we sold the Proust poster, ephemera. We like packets of ephemera and lists. All the names of the people in the first part of The Idiot. You could have, all of you could have had this for just $10.
What can we look forward from you in the next couple of years?
Right, silent staring in a mental institution in Switzerland. Well, I've just illustrated a book that Lemony Snicket wrote for children, and that should be coming out it will be coming out in a few months. And the compilation of and the Pursuit of Happiness, though Ingrid called something today, The Principles of Unhappiness. I think that's going to be my next book. It's such a wonderful title. And then another book with Daniel Handler, aka Lemony Snicket, and then Gertrude, and some things along the way, wallpaper for Maharam, stuff here and there that I can't think of, a lot of walking, and sweeping in Central Park.
Yeah, could you?
Tell you about that?
Yes, please.
Well, the finale of this will be. I don't think anybody has any more questions, right? Or you do? Okay. Should we answer a few questions? And I'll have to end with the sweeping, because that's the highest order.
We'll do 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll sweep up with the sweeping.
I really appreciated hearing of who it is that you've looked at over time, mentors and influences and the like. One set of names that didn't come up and surprised me was Ray and Charles Eames, a couple who worked together and who also collected wonderful ephemera. I'm wondering if you might speak a little bit about your collaboration with Tibor.
If you're very lucky, you meet somebody who you can work with, and I was just incredibly lucky. I have to say that I've been lucky twice, because I collaborate with Rick Meyerowitz also, and that's also how did that happen? But Tibor and I were together for 30 years, and we met when we were 18, and we recognized something in each other that So we grew up together. We were children, and we grew up together, and we both happened to be curious about many, many things. Just the luck of the draw. We were just really lucky. So If you can work with somebody who you can be honest with and who you can hear criticism from and know that it's coming from an intelligent place and not a spiteful place, and build on that, and if you have a sense of humor, then you can collaborate. So I don't collaborate with many people, but when I work for people, but it's not as if it's a collaboration. But to collaborate with somebody is really a joy. I don't know if that answers your question.
There's one final question.
Hi, Myra. Can you tell us some of the things that you collect and also a little bit about the process of collecting and the life of a collection?
I collect insults. Actually, I have to say that Tibor's father collected insults. Any relatives of Tibor's in the audience? No. Good. Good. Now I can really tell you what went on. Tibor's father collected insults, and I said he used to write them in a little notebook. And I said, I'd give anything to have that notebook. Grudges held for 30 years. It's actually quite, you do that and you keep it in your head. You don't actually keep a notebook of it. So what do I collect? What do I collect? Well, a lot of the things that are in the show are things that I collect. I think I started with postcards when I was, a teenager or something like that. And string, suitcases, linens. I can't even think of what I collect. Boxes, shoes, what? Ladders, candy bars. One of my favorite candy bars is when Rick and I went to Cuba and we bought the candy bar called the Cratch Bar, which sounded like a venereal disease as opposed to a candy. And there it was, Cratch. I don't even want to think. I'm horrified by all the things that I have, which are very neat, but I do want to get rid of them. Well, books, of course. Books I won't get rid of.
Can you sweep us out of here and into our reception?
I'll sweep you in the most noble. I live in New York, of course, and Central Park is a very important part of New York City. And in the pursuit of happiness, the principles of unhappiness, I did a piece on one of the months was about New York City and about sanitation in New York, and the end of it, and it started. I had this dream. What happened was that I had this dream that I was with the head of the Department of Sanitation, and we were madly attracted to each other. So I called the editor and I said, I've got to do something about the sanitation department. Clearly, this is the way the newspaper runs, right? You have a dream about, having an affair with the head of the Department of Sanitation. And so I wrote about it. It was really wonderful, and I met a lot of people who were, and in the course of this year of working on America, I met, wonderful and interesting and incredible people. And then at the end of this column, I said, what I'm going to do for New York, I'm going to volunteer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make New York shining and clean. That I know that. And of course, I didn't do anything, as is the wont of most people, make grand statements and then do nothing. And then I was walking through Central Park with a friend, and we saw some people volunteering for the Conservancy, and so we started speaking to them, and they said, what you can do, you can clean, and you can prune, and you can weed, and you can sweep. And when I heard the word sweep, my heart jumped. And so now I volunteer to sweep. I sweep in Central Park. You go there and you get a broom and a scooper, or you can also get a grabber, and a tag, and you can sweep anywhere you want in the park for as long as you want, and you can lie about and smoke cigarettes if you want. Nobody's there watching you. And it is the most ennobling and the highest form. It's the best thing that I've done all year, and I think that to keep a city clean, to keep any place clean, but to keep a city clean is one of the most noble things that you could do. And I was so proud of myself. I couldn't handle it. I was giddy, and people ask you questions. Now that you're official, where do we go and what do we do and how do we get tickets and where's the bathroom? And then I decided that, and then I started speaking to people, and so there was a group, and particularly, and I'll end with this, there was a group of monks who had come, and I asked them, where they from? And they said they came from Thailand. And I said, is this your first time in New York? And they said, yes. And I bowed with my broom, and I bowed to them, and I said, welcome to New York City. And I thought that moment was that, I don't need to do any more work. That's it. So that's where I'm heading. This illustration stuff is just temporary. It's going to be, the sweeping is going to take over.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.